Matagal lang kami ng UB online. It all started with just one ID. Sobrang na-appreciate ko ang beauty niya. Then, when my life got tougher, tinulungan niya ako. I didn't have to go out to pay or enroll my billers. Wala siyang hinihingi in return. One transfer can be free kasi. Lagi siyang may time for me, even to deposit my check. Iba siya mag-alaga kahit peak banking hours pa. Move on na ako from others. UB Online is my forever.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Luz Wendy Noble, BusinessWorld Central Bank reporter. I welcome you all to today's BusinessWorld Insight session about digital banks and the transformation of the financial sector. Banking can now be done by a click, wherever and whenever. The pandemic has made this narrative stronger, with central bank data showing that 20.1% of all transactions in 2020 were done online. The rise of digital banks is expected to help the central bank in its goal to make these online transactions eventually make up 50% of all payments by next year, 2023, in this country. Just for the sake of our audience who are maybe curious and is new to this discussion on digital banks, traditional banks may offer online banking services, but they differ from digital banks under the BSP's regulations. We want to clarify that being a digital bank requires a different license, and there are only 6 of them granted by the BSP. What sets them apart from other bank types is that they carry out financial products and services all online, as they do not have physical branches, but are only required to operate one headquarter. Now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our first speaker, who will tell you more of how these digital banks have the potential to transform the financial system. He is the Director of the Technology Risk and Innovation Supervision Department at the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Taking a highly critical and challenging role in the BSP, he heads the department primarily responsible for supervision of technology and cybersecurity risk, including emerging technologies. He continues to spearhead various cybersecurity reforms aimed at enhancing the BSP cybersecurity oversight and supervision, as well as promoting a secure and cyber-resilient financial ecosystem through close coordination and partnerships with industry associations, regulatory counterparts, and other relevant stakeholders. We are glad to have you back here for another session of Business World Insights. Our first speaker, Mr. Melchor Labasan. Go ahead, Mr. Mel.
Hi, good morning, Wendy, and to all our viewers. Again, thank you Business World, and to all your partners for this opportunity. I'm sure most of you are already aware of the digital payment transformation roadmap, which was launched by the BSP back in 2020 in collaboration, of course, with various players. Now, this has twin objectives, of course, of converting retail payments into 50% of retail payments into digital form, and of course by mainstreaming digital payment channels, by ensuring, of course, that 70% of Filipinos have access to transaction accounts which they can use on a day-to-day basis. Now, speaking of our digital banking, speaking of recent developments, our financial inclusion dashboard, based on our financial inclusion dashboard as of the second quarter of 2021, I'm happy to share that we have there was an 85% increase in terms of the number of basic deposit accounts. We also observed 94% increase in terms of the number of e-money issuers. And the share of digital payments to total retail payments stood at 27% compared to 24% back in 2019. And as Wendy mentioned, we have issued our digital banking framework, and so far we have already issued licenses to 6 digital banking players, and We hope that these players will continue to serve the underbanked, underserved, and of course the mass market, and that they will also offer other innovative financial products and services, let's say payment, remittance, investment, as we inch closer to our strategic goal of giving Filipinos greater access to innovative, convenient, and affordable financial products and services. Thanks, Wendy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mel, for sharing the new statistics with us about the higher basic deposit accounts. That's a welcome development. And of course, eventually, we are hopeful that aside from digital banks helping DSP's target of having retail payments make up 50% of all the payments by 2023, we are also hopeful that digital banks will help BSP to reach the goal of having 70% of Filipino adults to have financial accounts by next year. So for this time, we have the second speaker. We want to welcome the founder and CEO of Uno Asia, a Singapore-based fintech that is the primary incorporator of Uno Bank. Uno Asia is the first fintech company to receive a license outright to operate a digital bank here, which is currently being established. Our speaker is a financial services and banking veteran with experience of 27 years in working across multiple countries and product areas. Let us welcome our speaker who is joining us from Singapore, Mr. Manish Bai.
Thank you, Wendy. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Business World, for giving this opportunity. In a way, I'm privileged to be speaking just after Director Mel because a lot of what he mentions resonates with what I'm going to talk about. I also have a few slides. Let me just also take this opportunity to kind of bring them on the screen. So, on a positive note, the first thing which is highly incredible is that the digital transformation is progressing on the right track in the Philippines. While there are challenges, and Mel touched upon it earlier, some of the challenges, but at the same time, the tailwinds are huge. And it will be a shame and it will be a lost opportunity if the country or the digital banking players like us or other fintech players don't make use of these tailwinds. And whatever I see till now is going on in the positive direction. From my side, I think four phenomena have been key, which are very very noticeable. Starting with the PhilSys or the national identity, that would be a game changer. The focus from central bank and everyone on payments and the personal goal of the governor to see a 50% of all digital payments by 2023 is very pleasing. The third is open finance. And the lastly is the six digital banks, of which Uno, I'm also part of the one, and going to talk a bit about it. And why is this so critical? This whole thing about digital transformation and inclusion for Philippines. And you'll get a snapshot of this if you look at certain numbers on the current slide. Now, when you look at both global peers or global similar countries in emerging markets or even regional players, unfortunately, Philippines is currently lagging behind when it comes to banking account penetration or even kind of unsecured consumer loans or consumer credit penetration. And with the tailwinds, which I spoke about earlier, and you saw in the previous slides, this is an opportunity to move Philippines much to the right, to the kind of the center of this table, or even on more extreme right in 3 to 4 years. And I think to make this phenomena, digital banks play a key role. And let me take this opportunity to kind of also introduce Uno. So, to start with, we are a full spectrum digital bank, which is data driven. By full spectrum, we mean one trusted interface to solve all your financial needs. That is, borrow, save, protect, invest, and transact. And our differentiation is around three prime levels. One, we want to differentiate ourselves through consumer lending. As you saw in the previous slide, making sure that everyone has easy and optimal access to consumer credit is very important. Being a digital bank, we want to make credit easily accessible at economic rates to everyone in Philippines. Our second moat is around one single trusted interface to make things delivered in a speedy and a faster manner. And our last is hyper leverage on technology and provide hyper personalization. That is not sell products, but sell solutions. Look at what our customers really need, focus on the current and possible future needs, and offer them products which are smart at the right time, right place. We plan to launch by the first half of this year, and really looking forward to kind of serving the people of Philippines and making an impact and helping with the goals of BSP and the country around financial inclusion as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. What we got from his presentation is that we should be looking forward to the launch of Uno Bank the first half of this year, and they will be strong on consumer lending. That will be their their focus here in the Philippines. It's also important that Mr. Manish mentioned about the national ID and how it could help to bring in more Filipinos into the bank population, because it is one of the hindrances, documentary requirements, the lack of identification requirements for Filipinos. So we hope that more of you guys could get a national ID soon. So the next on our lineup for our speakers today, let me introduce a director at Maya Bank, one of the only 6 digital banks granted license by the BSP. He is also the president of Voyager Innovations and Paymaya Philippines, the only end-to-end digital financial services company in the country with platforms that cut across consumers and enterprises. With over 25 years of experience in financial services, he oversees the company and shapes the organization's strategy. Let us welcome Mr. Shailesh Baitwan.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Wendy and Business World, for having us here today, and to all my fellow panelists. I think Manish and Mel set a great stage on Philippines overall, the opportunity and the need to move with a sense of speed and urgency to drive the next level of financial inclusion. We are very pleased to be a recipient of the digital banking license from the BSP. And Maya Bank represents the next stage of financial services and payments in the Philippines for us, for Paymaya. Now, based on our consumer studies, we've seen that convenience and accessibility are the top drivers for mobile wallets. People find mobile wallets easy, accessible, convenient, fast. So it is a great way for them to start their kind of digital financial journey. On the other hand, we know that Filipinos have a very high level of trust with banking institutions, given the BSP supervision and the oversight that they bring. So with Maya Bank, in tandem with Paymaya, we intend to offer a combination that we hope will provide a set of unparalleled services to a very large segment of the Philippines population. We are an end-to-end financial service platform today where we serve consumers and we serve enterprises. We serve them physically, whether they have on-ground operations or requirements, or online. And the first stage of this unique ecosystem, driven through payments largely and driving financial inclusion, I would like to call it kind of inclusive finance 1.0, let's say. Because like I said, easy to open, accessible digital wallets, and that's got millions and millions of people onto their first journey. On the other side, we must remember that payments acceptance, you need merchants to be able to accept digital payments. And that's the other part of the equation that we've been working on and have got hundreds of thousands of locations today which accept digital payments. So both on the consumer side and on the enterprise side, we've bridged that. And then, of course, for those who are still not quite ready for the digital journey, we have our on-ground Smart Padla network with over 60,000 locations across the country, where our agents are able to help them with all their digital services of sending money or bills payment, etc. Now, on the e-wallet, payment processing, remittance, these three have really given us beachheads that has helped to spearhead the first part of the financial inclusion journey. And Mel spoke about how the targets for getting to 50% all digital payments is something that we're aspiring for 2023, and we are really keen and are playing a large part in that. Now, the next part, what I call the kind of inclusive finance 2.0, adds on the next layer, which is about making sure that 50% of the adult population have a bank account. That is the other target that Governor Jokno and as BSP has set. And we are very keen to make sure that we play a very active role in taking and participating in the next level as we do that with the Maya Bank coming in. So Maya Bank will help us to now offer products such as loans, insurance, investment, deposit taking for a very large set of customers whom we are already serving today. So we have 40 million registered consumers across our PayMaya network, and we have literally nearly 500,000 registered MSMEs who are using us today for payments. And then we have the on-ground network, which covers 92% of the cities. So we are very keen, as was pointed out by Mel, to go and serve the kind of unbanked, underbanked segment in terms of consumers and also MSME with the next stage of financial services. And we will do this with intuitive, transparent, accessible products based on huge data insight that we have with customers that we have built up over the years that we have been operating in the Philippines with a very large customer base. So we are challenging ourselves, recognizing the sense of urgency from the BSP to meet these aggressive targets. So we were very pleased to get our license from the Monetary Board in September 2021, and we've challenged ourselves in a 6 months time frame to now launch Maya Bank. So we are quite excited to be part of this very important journey and working with the BSP, of course, and of course important players like PPMI who bring together the integration with InstaPay, PesoNet, QRPH, etc., to really create a common banking platform and networks that will make sure that this journey of financial inclusion moves fast, with all of us players being able to leverage on some common standards and protocols. So we're very excited and look forward to bringing you Maya Bank launch in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Shailesh. So we are given another 6 month time frame, no, to look forward to what Maya Bank is going to offer us. Mr. Shailesh mentioned about their MSME clients in PayMaya. So let's see what they're gonna offer for them through Maya Bank. We are looking forward to how Maya Bank synergy with PayMaya will make payments more convenient, because he mentioned about convenience and accessibility. Now, our next speaker has more than 4 decades of experience in banking. She spent 19 years at the then Central Bank of the Philippines, where she retired as Director of the International Trade Department. She worked for 15 years at Metro Bank, where she was Chief Risk Officer, and retired as Executive Vice President in charge of the bank's foreign branches and subsidiaries. Also, she spent 7 years at Bank of Commerce, where she retired in 2015 as Executive Vice President and Operations Group Head of the San Miguel Affiliated Bank. Let us welcome the General Manager of the Philippine Payments Management Incorporation, Ms. Carmelita Araneta. Ms. Melit, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to join this session at the invitation of BusinessWorld and to introduce the organization I am affiliated with. And this is the Philippine Payments Management Incorporated, or PPMI. This is actually the payment system management body formed by the payments industry in response to the call of the BSP when it launched the National Retail Payment System, or NRPS, in March 2017. The PPMI is industry-led, bringing together and organizing all clearing participants in retail payment systems into a self-governing body that will assist the BSP in overseeing the national payment system. So from an original handful of 28 members, no, mostly BSFIs or BSP supervised financial institutions in 2017, today PPMI lists 144 participants, consisting of 43 KBs and UBs, 75 thrift and rural banks, and 26 electronic money issuers, among which is PayMaya. 94 are participating in PesoNet, and 62 are on board with InstaPay. So when you hear about PesoNet and InstaPay, these are the two payment streams or automated clearinghouses formed under the NRPS. You might remember that PesoNet, which is a batch electronic fund transfer credit scheme, was the first to be launched in November 2017. In April 2018, InstaPay was launched, a real-time, low-value push payment scheme for transaction amounts up to 50,000 pesos. So how has the industry fared so far? Given the goal of the BSP's digital payments transformation roadmap, we look at statistics in terms of volume. PesoNet has recorded an average percentage increase in volume of 200% over 5 years from November 2017 to December 2021. On InstaPay, on the other hand, posted a hefty 490% average increase over 4 years, reckoned from April 2018 to December 2021. So much of the increase, however, in usage were registered at the height of the pandemic when the participants, at the urging of the BSP, reduced or even waived transaction fees. So it is during this time, this is from March 2020 up until December 2021. Indeed, the banking public realized the benefits of the vision of the NRPS during these difficult times. And I'm happy to note that they have actually adapted to this usage. What have been the other developments in the NRPS? Last Monday, the BSP and PPMI launched the PesoNet MBS or multiple batch settlement, which doubles the frequency of settlement from once a day at 4 p.m. to by adding another batch at 10 o'clock in the morning. So the aim is to make PesoNet available even during weekends and holidays. Prior to MBS, we also launched the eGov facility, and this is payments to government. And to date, we have more than 100 government institutions onboarded with PayGate. For InstaPay, the game changer is the introduction of the QRPH, the proprietary QR code form factor developed by the industry for the Philippines following the EMV standards. In 2019, we launched QRPH P2P or person to person, and last year QRPH P2M or payments to merchants. This is surely expected to further hasten the adoption of digital payments. A lot of other initiatives are going to be introduced under the NRPS, all designed to support the public-private partnership between the BSP and the payments industry, working together to promote the sound development of the payment systems based on the principles of cooperation, good governance, healthy competition, and consumer protection. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Melit. Thank you for mentioning about the eGov facility, PesoNet, InstaPay, and your thrust in the PPMI, which shows us how industry participants are really committed to help on the goal to make the country a cash-light economy. Ms. Melit mentioned about the multiple batch settlements that was launched earlier this week, and I think they're also working on probably making batch settlements also available sometime, someday, also during the weekends and the holidays. So we look forward to that possibility. Now, the last but certainly not the least on our lineup today is the co-founder and CEO of UnionDigital, the digital bank of Union Bank of the Philippines. In 2016, he established the FinTech Business Group at Union Bank, advocating a collaborative model of banking, enabling and synergizing with fintechs. In 2019, the Singapore FinTech Association recognized him with the Asia FinTech Leader Award. So let us welcome on our virtual stage Mr. RV De Vera. Hi, Sir RV.
Hello, good morning. Shai, I believe my slides are with you. Okay. Good day, everyone. I'm RV De Vera, a proud Union banker for 12 years and now co-founder and CEO of UnionDigital Bank. Next slide, please. There, thank you. Sorry, previous slide, please. There, thank you. When we started this digital transformation journey, our aspiration was to adopt the mindset and agility of a tech company, but retain the governance and trust of a regulated bank. That aspiration became a reality on December 2020 when the Bangko Sentral released digital bank regulations. 6 months later, UnionDigital was born and operates as a tech company and also a bank. Next slide, please. When we thought about the future of financial services, we knew that the banks would need to digitize to stay relevant. That much was obvious. But how to digitize was a more complicated question. We took 3 different approaches to solving that problem. The first was the newly transformed Union Bank. Another is UBX, the fintech arm, and of course UnionDigital, the digital native bank. Union Bank is the core bank and takes a hybrid approach to the future. It has undergone a huge transformation to embrace the digital future and adopt as much of a digital interface as possible. However, it will always have branches and will continue to be a tether for the bank's ecosystems. UnionDigital takes a 100% virtual approach. It will exist purely in the cloud, a built-for digital banking platform that can address and embrace the emerging needs of a fast-growing digital world. Lastly, UBX is Union Bank's fintech and venture capital investment vehicle. It is purely an accelerator for fintechs and aims to prepare for the future by investing in fintechs and/or creating its own. All of these approaches were developed to ensure that we would be well positioned to offer financial services to our customers, regardless of how digital finance would evolve. And those possibilities were accelerated by these key trends that are now driving exponential growth. Next slide, please. Key disruptive trends in finance are very clear. First, in fintech, we've seen enormous growth, 6 to 7x. Our very own UBX did 6 to 7x in terms of growth. In the Philippines, we've seen it 5x. ETH transactions have grown 36 times, and the Philippines has become a crypto center in the world, having about 3.57 MetaMask users. Open finance has been a priority of the BSP and the MAS to drive more interoperability and transactions, and that opens the floodgates to more digitally enabled transactions. Next slide, please. The Philippines is primed for digital and Web 3.0 exponential growth. We're the 4th fastest growing digital economy in the world. The Philippines has over 20% digital transactions in 2020 from 1% in 2013, as mentioned. The Philippines today has 4.36 million Filipinos who own cryptocurrencies, and we are the first in the world in NFT ownership. This play-to-earn phenomena has exploded here, with 3 million daily users on Axie Infinity, 40% of which are Filipino. That's 2x growth in active daily users in the last 6 months. Digital is here, and yes, the Filipino is again at the center of it, just as we were when texting first came out and again when social media emerged. Today, for the 6th straight year, the Philippines remains the top in social media usage worldwide with 4.15 hours a day. We are also the highest in internet usage, among the highest at 11. Meanwhile, we're above the global average when it comes to e-commerce adoption. The global average is 76.8 and the Philippines is 80.2. Next slide, please. So, why are we best positioned? The opportunity for the Philippines to emerge as a world leader in this industry is before us, but we need to seize and maximize the present opportunities in order to make it there. Union Bank is the only publicly listed bank to be granted a digital license by the BSP. That means we have the pedigree, the history, the experience, and the strength of a universal bank parent, capable of bridging the regulatory gap between the technologies of today and tomorrow. We are best positioned because of our trailblazing leadership in fintech, blockchain, and open finance. Most of all, our roots are here. We are here for the Filipino, and we're here to stay. Next slide, please. Our experience in co-creation and collaboration with fintechs means we know how to turn emerging innovations into real products and put them into the hands of the customers. Next slide, please. We've established working relationships with global fintechs to become recognized as fintech leaders in the Philippines. Next slide, please. On blockchain, we embraced blockchain early as a powerful technology that could help in our transformation and with our mission to drive inclusion. Our work on I2I, the launch of our stablecoin, PHX, and Bonds PH demonstrates Union Bank's commitment to implementing exciting new blockchain tech into actual use cases that allow fellow Filipinos to do more with their money. For those unfamiliar, I2I is a nationwide blockchain network that facilitates the participation of rural banks and other financial institutions into PesoNet and InstaPay. And in 2019, we connected that network to OCBC Bank in Singapore to pilot a near real-time remittance from Singapore to a rural bank account in Surigao del Sur using digital currency. To power these payments, we created our own CBDC, commercial bank-backed digital currency known as PHX. Bonds PH is a partnership with the Bureau of Treasury that allows users to digitally purchase bonds and record those transactions on the blockchain. All of this was approved by our very forward-looking and innovative Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Next slide, please. On open finance, we championed open finance in the Philippines by creating APIs to connect our partners to ourselves, one another, and to the world. Our award-winning Open API portal, which is like a Netflix of APIs, enables companies, fintechs, and banks to work together better. For instance, our payment APIs are utilized to transfer funds from Union Bank accounts to a digital wallet, e-commerce platform, or a fintech in real time and in a secure manner. By making payments to these platforms easier than ever, we support Filipino industry and empower its growth. Next slide, please. Finally, our partnership with APIX by the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the World Bank opened up the Philippines to the world by connecting us with a global API exchange. That means more connections between Filipino businesses and global industry leaders. In closing, UnionDigital will harness these three key themes to deliver superior customer experience. UnionDigital, as a fintech and also a bank, will provide our customers with the best that both these worlds have to offer. Next slide, please. And lastly, we will always be passionate about customer centricity and will tap Union Bank's natural ecosystems where we can unleash UnionDigital and help tech up Pilipinas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. RV. That's very comprehensive. And we've learned a lot about the partnerships and collaborations that Union Bank and the parent firm has tied up to boost the digitalization of your company. You've also mentioned about open finance. So this is very interesting for me, how digital banks will utilize open finance, the customer consented data sharing, to ensure better services for the consumers. So I guess we want to learn more, and our audience wants to learn more about digital banks. So I'm gonna call every one of our speakers for our virtual question and answer portion. And the first question goes to Mr. Mel from the BSP, because the central bank last year decided to keep the number of digital banks to 6 to closely monitor developments and ensure healthy competition among digital banks and the precursor traditional banks. So are there any updates on this so far? Is the BSP still keen to keep the limit? And what could change the directive by the Monetary Board?
Yeah. So again, when the as mentioned earlier, while we initially set the limit to six, it's constantly subject to reassessment based, of course, on our assessment of the banking system. But so far, based on what we have observed, the first, again, as mentioned, only two digital banks have launched so far, and four are scheduled to launch this year. But the two digital banks have already onboarded around 260,000 new customers, which is equivalent to around 6 billion in terms of deposits. So aside from, so we based on the original intent of the digital banking framework, really the digital banks have the potential to boost financial inclusion in the country. So aside from offering traditional savings and time deposits digitally. Plus, of course, I mentioned also about basic digital banks. The two players that went ahead were able also to enable access to mobile-friendly lending and investment facility. So we expect significant improvements in terms of, as you mentioned, statistics. As again, once we see the other four players launch their services anytime this year.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mel, for sharing about the statistics on the deposits so far and the customers onboarded. I think that's a challenge for our upcoming digital bank. So I am very hopeful that you will add up to those numbers to ensure that more Filipinos are part of the financial system. Now, just a follow up on that question, we want to hear from the industry group. So let's have Ms. Melit of PPMI how you think of the limit and BSP's regulatory approach so far on digital banks, and how do you think will this digital banks impact the playing field for the industry?
Thank you, Wendy. Um, I believe that this is a prudent and deliberate move of the BSP in terms of its role in licensing new entrants to the financial system. As always, the PPMI remains supportive of this move and such initiatives moving forward. I also believe that this can really hasten the adoption of digital payments, given that digital banks are given a specific category by itself. The six
All
digital banks are expected to really contribute much in terms of initiatives, use cases that the industry can very well benefit from. Looking forward to. Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Miss Melit. Yes, I'm also looking forward to the possibilities of the use cases that digital banks will offer the Filipinos. So now my next question is for Mr. RV from Union Digital. So far, how have digital banks been helping BSP in their digital transformation roadmap, especially on bringing more Filipinos into the formal banking system?
Thank you, Wendy. So the roadmap has been very helpful in really opening up the fintech landscape. Now, so if you look at the past few years, you've had a lot of fintech players come in, also blockchain players. What that does is it enables more innovation to come in. And what we've done in Union Bank was to enable that through the platforms we serve. So the customers we have on our lending platforms, on our e-commerce platforms, they're all powered in part or whole by fintechs we've also partnered with. So the way to really drive it is exactly what the BSP has been doing, is opening the market in a very regulated manner, right? So that we can use these technologies responsibly in a regulated manner for the benefits of our customer. So that's exciting when I think about the technology stack we have. So we started with fintech. We're now we did blockchain. We now have open finance, and these are all a stack of technologies that when you harness it and you harness it together, it becomes very powerful, not in its individual self. So, for example, there's a lot to be done on blockchain. There's a lot of benefits from that technology, from the smart contract nature of it, and that's something we intend to use in payments as well in Union Digital. So we will be creating our own Union Digital peso-backed stablecoin. It's called PHD, And that digital peso backed by Union Bank will now allow us to perform payments in a much more efficient manner and future forward looking manner as well, because it's already a digitized token on blockchain. We've piloted this 3 years ago. We piloted that when we did a cross border remittance to Singapore. So imagine the use case, net of the technology, Wendy, the power to be able to send real time from a kababayan in Singapore to a rural bank account in the Philippines, right? And also through that technology, the same, which is what we're doing in I2I now. A rural bank has access to PesoNet and InstaPay and can pay suppliers in the Philippines, passing through the rails of PesoNet and InstaPay through that technology. That for me is very exciting because it unleashes so many use cases. And then you compound that with open finance, which really opens up the borders and access to other technologies. And our work with Singapore has proven that it's just tremendous when you can give the Filipinos access to world-class technologies in a safe, secure, regulated manner, right? And a very low cost because it's all technologically driven on the premise of us being a digital bank and having end-to-end electronic channels. So it's very exciting. The roadmap is just the beginning, and you can see the pieces that they put together to really compound the growth of digital payments.
Thank you, Mr. RV. What I get is that there's going to be a lot of cooperation from banks, fintechs, and there will be use cases for everyone in the market, like those who receive remittances, even those that are banking with rural banks will get to see the impact that digital banks will bring to us. So we're very excited to see you launch very soon. Now, this next question is for Mr. Manish Bai. What new or improved services do the rise of digital banks give Filipino businesses and consumers?
Thank you, Wendy. But digital banks per se have few very inherent advantages on the face of it. Starting with the cost of operations of a digital bank is much lower than the cost of a traditional bank. So what does this imply? This implies that the digital banks are able to kind of optimize this lower cost of operations by passing it on to customers in terms of either better pricing or better economics. That's one. Secondly, because they have a low cost of operations, they are able to channel much more investments into innovation, something which RV also kind of touched upon. The second inherent advantage is that digital banks and all six of here, and you've heard few of them speak, is constructing digital bank through kind of a modern new tech stack. What it implies is that there's much more flexibility to kind of innovate, to kind of customize products, to have smaller size, and be much more agile in not really kind of pushing a product, which was approach of traditional banks. I myself have been a traditional banker for 25 years. We started with, hey, this is the product. How do we sell this? Rather, right now is what is the customer looking at and the needs. I think RV already touched upon blockchain. 2 years back or 3 years back, banks were not talking about it because it's an evolving need today and it needs to be met. So what I would see happening in the landscape is there are obvious benefits which everyone will do, like higher interest rates for the customer, more economical borrowing, better payments, cashbacks, discounts, better experience, and the customer is laughing and is a winner, and it's great for the development of the ecosystem. But what will also happen is that each digital bank is going to kind of focus on their competitive advantage or something which where they think they can be able to make a differentiation. Like I've heard like offshore Filipino bank leadership talk about their focus on migrant workers. We earlier heard Salish talking about how Paymaya has a huge merchants ecosystem, and whenever I've heard sellers speak, he's already thinking of how his bank can help the merchants. We at Uno are much more focused on experience, personalization, consumer lending, because we believe, like unlike what RV was mentioning, we believe that because we are not part of any big group right now, we are a classic startup. Our strength is no baggage. Like any other startup, we are able to think what the customer really needs and start from scale zero. And then RV touched upon like about cryptocurrency and everything. So I think these benefits will all start translating to customer, and they will see huge amount of variations of the traditional products and new products like crypto, new products like insurance packages, credit insurance linked to your borrowing, family pot savings account, parent-child savings accounts, and those kind of innovations will all be available in Philippines, I think, in 12 to 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manish. That's a good trailer. And you've mentioned about being of digital banks being customer centric, that they have the ability to focus more on innovation because of the low cost of operation of not having to maintain branches. And maybe customers will be looking forward to what you've mentioned about cashbacks and discounts that digital banks may be able to offer. Now, this next question is for the three people who are involved in the launch of digital banks. So, to Mr. RV, Mr. Shailesh, and Mr. Manish. With the rise of digital payments, cybersecurity has also become a pressing concern, and this has affected even big banks. Just recently, even one big bank in Singapore has been affected by a cybersecurity incident. So I'm wondering, how will digital banks respond to these concerns, and what other challenges in terms of starting and expansion are being faced by digital banks, and the way you will address them. So maybe we'll start with um, Mr. Shailesh.
Sure, Wendy. Thank you. Giving me the simplest question to go with. Now, this is a major pressing issue, right? And I think, as you rightly said, this is not just about an individual institution. This is, I think, collectively for all the players in the financial system. We have to foster trust and confidence in the consumers in the digital services that we are offering, because our aspirations and ambitions to grow will happen if the customers feel confident and secure in using digital banks or digital financial services. So the starting point in my mind, first of all, is reliability and uptime, right? I mean, people are going to be using us as the kind of cornerstone of their financial journey. Their money, their transactions, everything sits with us. So, for example, we at PayMaya make sure that we have more than 99.9% uptime of our app, and make sure that all the customer ability to access and security is embedded within the app and within the design itself. So we will be making sure that we continue to build on that as we go forward. So we have deep information security, risk compliance practices that are also embedded across the organization, because this is something that has to be a core culture of the organization. All the infrastructure processes need to make sure that they're thinking along the lines of security and customer, making sure we keep them and protect them. So we keep strengthening our systems. We've joined forces with the Anti-Money Laundering Council, the AMLC, to help the government prevent and combat financial crimes through information sharing protocols. And I think more and more information sharing will be critical. We work with the National Privacy Commission as well on payment schemes and other members of the financial ecosystem, such as PPMI. So again, making sure that you're connected and you are constantly engaging with these various bodies will be important. You have to constantly looking at staying ahead of fraudsters, right? Not one step, but two steps. So multi-factor authentication. We have features for peer-to-peer bank transfer, device ID fingerprinting, facial recognition, AI, ML. I mean, these are just core tools that you have to constantly upgrade and look at. And then, of course, making sure that for someone like us, who also serves enterprises for payments, so the global kind of gold standard of PCI DSS certification, compliance, data management is there. So all those are important, but the last thing I would like to call out, one is, I think, we very heavily support the pending legislation, for example, the SB 2380, which makes muling or selling financial accounts and social engineering schemes punishable offense. And to put more teeth in that to make sure that fraudsters and mal players are not allowed to get away with such practices, I think will be critical. And we've touched upon, I think people have touched on national ID. And the last I would say is consumer education, right? So working closely with BSP and industry partners to strengthen consumer awareness that their KYC, their information is absolutely critical and central to them keeping that completely guarded and safe. We know a lot of compromises happens knowingly or unknowingly by people giving the KYC or other information. So it's an industry level effort that needs to be done. We already have a number of tools in place, but we are constantly working with all the players to make sure that overall, as an industry, we keep evolving faster and faster than the fraudsters.
Thank you, Mr. Shailesh. Now let's have Mr. RV. What's your take on this?
Thank you, Wendy. So, with the exponential growth of digital, you're really going to also have an exponential growth in risk. So we have to stay ahead. And the nice thing about being a digital bank natively from day one is you have the tools, you have the technology. You have to couple that obviously with proper risk assessment, identifying those risks, and then addressing that. And the digital part of digital bank opens itself to so many technologies you can use to engage. No, so one is make sure that we can actually use that tech properly. Proper cyber risk assessments are also done. Collaboration, as my colleagues mentioned, that's definitely key. And I think, I mean, Shilesh, Manish, we can announce here now that we have spoken as an association of digital banks that we will collaborate to make sure that we share information when it comes to security. We work together because they're absolutely right. We have to do this together, not just as an association but as a country. And it's not something to be alarmed in the sense that the more digital we get, the more we have to really upgrade our infrastructure and our risk processes. So that's something we're keen to do as digital banks individually, but also as an association collectively. And then, of course, together with regulation, help enforce these things to the public and educate them.
Thanks for the assurance, Mr. RV, of how digital banks are going to team up to address these issues. May we also hear from Mr. Manish?
I think my colleagues have touched upon most of the relevant points. So just not to repeat, I'll just focus on two key things. I think this is one investment with digital banks don't have to shy and cut any corners in. And at least in Uno, our strategy is very, very clear that we are investing in top technology and fraud systems, which capture not only bad intentions, but also kind of goes beyond genuine failures and hacks and leakages which can happen in case you expand yourself too wide. One example is, I think as digital banks, we ourselves also responsible how many channels we open ourselves to, because it's multiple technologies, and every time you open new channels, it can be exposed to various risks. And so I think the onus also falls upon the players to themselves take baby steps and ensure that the security is prime before they move to the next level. Like in Uno, how we are kind of tackling it is our strategy is very clear that we first want to kind of just launch with an app. We absolutely focused about technology, make everything is secure, and then look at other forms of kind of digital channels and expansion. Similarly, I think Salish touched upon education because there are two sides of the coin. There is one about security within the organization. But what's happening and what we have seen recently in Singapore, in Philippines, it's not only of the hacks in the banking system. It's basically the malintentions have been where we have been able to get the data from the customers themselves. So, in terms of regulations, which limit sharing of links, what Singapore is trying to do right now, or in terms of educating people so that they don't share any details and guard against phishing attacks, that's very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. Thanks for the reminder that cybersecurity is a joint undertaking, not just by financial institutions and regulators, but also for consumers to become more educated in handling digital transactions. Now, let's have Mr. Shailesh, because we're very excited to hear about the plans of digital banks. How can soon to launch digital, how have soon to launch digital banks setting up? What are the initial plans and expectations of upcoming digital banks once you start operating?
Well, I think as you heard from Mel, all the banks are looking at launching in the near future. As I said at the start, we appreciate that the reason this category has been created and the urgency of driving financial inclusion, both for payments and for setting up basic accounts. So we have challenged, like I said, ourselves to move with speed and a sense of urgency and purpose to get this done. So that's why I mentioned we internally challenged ourselves with a 6 months time frame from launch, from approval from the monetary board. Now, so first of all, we are launching not just a digital bank, but the way we think about it is it's literally a full financial platform, right? We want to take together with PayMaya, we are, revolutionize the way people look at money in the Philippines. We want to make sure that in the Philippines, people can pay, borrow, save, invest, insure at their fingertips instantly, whether it is consumers who have never been included in the financial journey or MSMEs, those two segments in particular. So first of all, we are setting up Maya Bank with customers at front and center, at the heart of it, right? We are customer obsessed. Thanks to PayMaya, we have a lot of data insight into 40 million registered consumers and nearly 500,000 MSMEs. And we are using this insight and data to create the next level of relevant products for the customers, right? So that's the starting point, is making sure how do we create products that we know will be extremely relevant and intuitive for a very large segment that we'll be serving. The second, and I think this was touched upon earlier, we all are digital first companies. That gives us the ability to innovate very fast and roll out very quickly. So, for example, at PayMaya, we do app releases every 2 to 3 weeks as our standard sprint. So we bring the same agility to the bank. So what this helps us is in terms of innovating products, changes, whether it's on the risk management side or whether it's on the consumer offering side, based on how consumers are reacting, what they're comfortable with. The second is we are also very used to a very high frequency of transactions. We do over 1 million transactions per day. And that with our digital capability really enables us to look at products which are going to be served and offered to a very large segment of population. So we're going to go after the huge unserved, unbanked, underbanked segment that we have. I'm not going to touch upon the value of products, which I think was said earlier because of cost structures. We are all digital. We are not encumbered with bricks and mortar and other processes. So that gives us an ability to, of course, offer interesting products with high margins and use cases. But I do want to round up on the last point, which I think is really important, is while we'll offer and launch speedily with really innovative, like I said, a full financial services platform for a large segment of the Philippines population, which today has done probably the only journey they've done is digital payments. So hence it's a natural evolution, and they already trust us and they're familiar with us, and we will build upon that. But part of that is the trust in terms of the information security, the risk compliance practices, and all the rest that we have embedded across the organization. We are regulated and licensed and audited by BSP. We are very much integrated with the banking infrastructure and framework with PesoNet, InstaPay, etc. So that is what we are leveraging to bring speed, innovation, and a set of products with a sense of urgency, but which hopefully, as you'll see, are going to be extremely intuitive and drive the goal of BSP towards, I think, 70% of financial accounts by 2023. So we are excited to be a part of this really important journey and get there quickly.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shailesh. We're looking forward to your opening and the products that you have, aside from, of course, continuing what you've already done with PayMaya. So for our last question on this Q&A session, this one goes to Ms. Melit and Sir Mel. Looking into what we've discussed so far this day, what can you say are the prospects of digital banks in the Philippines, and how can this segment further grow? Let's start with Ms. Melit.
Thank you, Wendy. I really believe that the prospects of digital banks in the Philippines is very high, considering that, as I mentioned earlier, the banking public has learned to appreciate with caution, the benefits in its activities. While the BSP has issued licenses to 6 digital banks at present, the PPMI has yet to receive applications for their membership in order to participate in the NRC. And we surely look forward to welcoming them to the organization, as we also believe that the organization benefit from their experience, their unique categorization as a digital bank, and of course, more initiatives and use cases. Thank you.
Thanks, Miss Melit. How about you, Mr. Mel?
Yeah, my take on that, Wendy, because as we transition to a new and hopefully better economy, we of course it is expected already that anything digital has a great potential. But of course, because Philippines has a relatively young population, and we have more digitally engaged population as well. So this segment of our society expects that, of course, that digital, fun, seamless, fast, convenient interface between them and the financial service providers like of course banks and even e-money issuers. And I'm also happy to note that most of the players are also targeting our MSMEs. Thank you for recognizing, of course, the need to capacitize our MSME to give them access to credit, because we know that their role really is critical with respect to economic recovery post-pandemic. And yeah, we believe that digital banks really have great prospects in the Philippines because of the reasons I just cited.
Thank you, Mr. Mel. And again, you've mentioned about the digital banks focus not just on unbanked Filipinos, but also on ensuring there is credit access for MSMEs that have been very helpful to our economy even before the pandemic. So before we close this program, I want to hear your last few words for our audience, what you want to leave to them to make them more excited about digital banks. We start with Mr. Manish.
Thanks, Wendy. I think one of the key things you've heard like everyone talk about is about agility. And every digital bank is ready to go and launch quickly over the next 6 months. And I'm sure as a group, entire all of the digital banks, we are looking forward to support from BSP and PPMI, and they've already been supporting a lot to make sure that they equally kind of participate in this agility, and we are able to launch very quickly. The second thing, which will be a game changer, and I touched upon earlier, is the single ID. And I would encourage everyone out there to get themselves enabled to this single ID. And once we have systems in place where you are able to kind of online, real time authenticate the identity based on this single ID, uh, the financial inclusion will actually explode, because, and we have seen it happen in few countries, and I think in by the end of 2022 that feature would be available in Philippines. So in closing, I'm very excited about the prospects. Seen a lot of work has already happened, lots more to be done, but as I stated in my opening statement, it's all moving in the right direction, and excited to be going live soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. Let's now hear from Mr. RV of Union Digital.
Thank you, Randy. So the Filipino has always been very digital, very digitally enabled. But I'm very excited because the Filipino and the Philippines has never been more digital than it is today. And so we're ready and ripe. We've had these technologies for the past 10 years, but the pandemic has really accelerated adoption. So at Union Digital, we're very excited about being that trusted bridge between the innovation of tomorrow and the regulation of today, and enabling the Filipinos with financial services, with tools to really help tech up the Philippines for a more digital Philippines and allow us to have more inclusive prosperity for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you as well for your time and for sharing your pro- your opportunities that will be offered by Union Digital. Now let's have Miss Melit of PPMI, please.
Wendy, this has been a very fruitful session that from Business World, hearing from the three new digital banks in the offing, Maya, Union Digital, and Uno Bank. We look forward to welcoming them to PPMI, and surely they cannot not hasten the growth and additional usage of digital banking in the
Thank you, Miss
Philippines.
Melit. Thank you, Miss Melit. Let's have Mr. Shailesh from Maya Bank.
Sure. I think we all are excited about the opportunity over here. As I said, I think financial inclusion 1.0 happened with the digital payments going out there in a big way from both consumers and enterprise side of the house. And I think we are now poised for financial inclusion 2.0 with the launch of the digital banks that we are talking about. So we now bring the next set of services, which intuitively will come on top so that uh, consumers and MSMEs are able to finally partake and participate in a financial inclusion, which we know drives the country forward, accelerates growth, is the best way for the economy to not just recover, but to thrive. So we are very excited, and everything I think that's been shared today, I think gives us all confidence that financial inclusion 2.0 is here. And over the coming months, through the course of 2022, hopefully it will be a very exciting time for the whole financial ecosystem in the Philippines.
Thanks, Mr. Shailesh, and we are looking forward to your projects. Now let's have Mr. Mel from the BSP.
Yeah. Yeah, once again, thank you, Wendy, and the Business World for this opportunity. Now, these new business models and technologies being offered by digital banks would actually spell the big difference in terms of onboarding new clients and capturing greater market share. And for us, the BSP, we remain committed in terms of advancing a policy and regulatory environment that is, of course, supportive of all of these innovations, while, of course, ensuring that there are adequate safeguards and controls. And we are happy and we look forward to collaborating with new, with existing players, and we are also happy to see them, all the players actually, to see them leverage on the power of technology to improve the lives of Filipinos. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, once again, many thanks to our speakers for sharing your insights. Mr. Mel Plabasan from the BSP, Mr. Manish Bai of Uno Bank, Mr. Shailesh Baidwan of Paymaya, Ms. Melit Araneta of PPMI, Mr. RB De Vera of Union Digital. Much gratitude as well to Union Bank for making this session possible. And to our partner organizations, the Bank Marketing Association of the Philippines, British Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Management Association of the Philippines, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and to our media partner, the Philippine Star. And of course, to everyone who joined us today. Be sure to tune in to Business World's social media pages to be updated on our next projects. Again, this is Luz Wendy Noble, and has been Business World Insights. Good afternoon, and I hope you stay safe.
Matagal na kami ng UB online. It all started with just one ID. Sobrang na-appreciate ko ang beauty niya. Then, when my life got tougher, tinulungan niya ako. I didn't have to go out to pay or enroll my billers. Wala siyang hinihingi in return. One transfer can be free kasi. Lagi siyang may time for me, even to deposit my check. Ba siya mag-alaga kahit peak banking hours pa. Move on na ako from others. UB Online is my forever.